what led you to write Men Without Work?
Well, I kind of make my living by pointing at problems that are hiding in plain sight. The
Mm.
things that everybody knows, but they haven't really put their finger on it. And back in 2016, I did this book on Men Without Work. Back then, I called it America's Invisible Crisis, because as I was reading the news, kind of like everybody else, I heard these discordant, dissonant soundings. On the one hand, we were getting all of this happy talk about how we were at full employment, and on the other hand, about half of the American public said we were in a recession. So how do you have full employment and you're in a recession at the same time, the way you're feeling about things? Well, the answer turns out to be that we've got an employment statistics system that was built to fight the last war, to look at the Great Depression. And back in the Depression era, if you were out of work, if you were a guy out of work, you were looking for a job. The idea that there would be millions and millions and millions of guys who would neither be working nor looking for work never crossed people's minds. But that is the post-war reality. And by the time that I wrote the first edition of this book, we talk about prime age men, the backbone of the economy, the 25 to 54s. For every prime age guy who was out of work and looking for a job, there were 3 guys who were neither working nor looking for work. Well, fast forward to today, we have depression-level work rates for prime age men, despite the fact that we have these seemingly marvelously low unemployment rates. The problem has taken on a new face now. As you mentioned, we've got 11 million unfilled jobs. We've got a peacetime labor shortage, something we've never seen in our country before. And the overall workforce is about 4 million lower than it would have been on pre-pandemic trends.
Right.
So it's not the new face of the flight from work isn't just these prime age men. We're seeing this problem pop up in other parts of our workforce as well.
Now, obviously, now we have the dynamic, and again, it's Men Without Work, and there's a phraseology to that, and a communication to that. Obviously, women have played a huge part in the workforce now for, a century. Is it different for men than for women?
It started way earlier for the guys. I can trace this problem back to the mid-1960s. The first 2 decades of the post-war era, there was no trend. Basically, all guys worked, and there was frictional unemployment, and there was only a tiny fraction of men who were not in the workforce. But from the mid-60s to today, it's been almost a straight line upwards in terms of this flight from work, the labor force dropout for this group. So that's the longest and the most acute part of this problem. Since about the year 2000, we've started to see a decline in labor force participation for women. Now, of course, women have always worked, as you were saying. It's just since the end of the post-war era they've gotten paid for it in the marketplace. They were not displacing men for the first half century of the post-war era. If they were displacing them, the overall work rate and labor force participation levels would have been flat. But those were going up, so they were kind of augmenting or supplementing. Something started happening around the year 2000, and both rates have been going down. And in particular, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I don't want to flash red lights where we don't need to. Say there's a yellow light flashing for prime age women who are not currently married and have no kids at home. We're starting to see some of the same things we saw with the Men Without Work for this group of women, and there are millions and millions of them that we think of.
So where's this all going? If work is becoming devalued in our society, becoming optional in our society, people are choosing to check out, and where does that leave us? Where does that take us to?